communicating in a visionary way about the strategic future of a technology organization, to me, is like an amazing skill that not everybody knows how to do well. Do you have any recommended ways to learn how to communicate about the business, about the technology organization to the business in an effective way? Like, is there a book to read, an article to go, people to follow? Where do you go to acquire the language skill there?
I'm totally with you. This is, I think, an underrated engineering leadership skill. That is, I think, easy to dismiss as kind of like soft skills or like, oh, I'm no good at that. But like, I think you really put a ceiling on yourself if you say like, oh, I'm so technical, like I don't need to have those soft skills or something. I think it's absolutely key to my ability to get things done.
Totally. But the thing is here is this is such a great story of showing the difference that made, because you could be stuck with legacy technology that's impeding like the progress of your organization. And this is like a huge macro example of what that would look like. Sorry, continue. I was just was like, this is a big deal.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I think a lot of it is like actually caring about what the business is about. I mean, understanding what the future of the business, what do the business leaders want the future of the business to be, and where do they see the future of the business, and like really internalizing that, and realizing it's your job to actually really understand that, and then being able, I think, in some ways, to talk in language that is the way that these decisions are actually made. I mean, the decisions are made at executive levels, like backed by real data about, they made, like the leadership team made it, and obviously did a lot of research to figure out like, well, how much money does it take to win the streaming wars, like, and how much are, and there's, these are grounded in facts, right? And you can say, is it worth us to spend $5 billion a year on content to maybe win, right? And that's the decision point, right? So similarly, I think, as I mentioned, kind of like the run the business, grow the business, we actually kind of came up with that framework. It's not like, oh, that was a slide that we pulled out of another deck, but it is the way that the team thinks about the world, a little bit. And so I get a lot of benefits from just being in, and I always ask to stick around in meetings that I'm not really supposed to be in. And I get a lot of benefit from being in those meetings and seeing other people brief, and seeing other people like executives, like how does the CEO of Fox Sports brief their business, right? And what resonates. And so I learn a lot from seeing how business leaders communicate, to about what their business is and how it runs, not only to understand myself, but also to see like what really resonates. So for me, it's just like a lot of listening and like outside of like my lane. And internalizing that. And I think it's very different company by company. Different leaders obviously respond to different approaches. But I think that's been like the first step for me. And then I don't know, I'm like very prepared when I talk to leadership, just extremely prepared. And then I always like basically try to I look at it and I'm like, what is all the jargon in here? And I remove all the jargon. And I always do like 4 passes for jargon every time to make sure that I don't use jargon. And I'm working on like blockchain stuff now. And like, that's very hard to avoid jargon.
And is this engineering jargon?
Yeah, it's like engineering jargon.
Okay. I was like, because you can also pull out the business lingo too, and lots
Business
of
lingo is
jargon.
totally cool. Drop that in there, all day. But engineering jargon, like I do like 4 passes to remove it.
For engineering leaders that are not in those meetings yet, because as you said, those are great contacts to get started and prepared for making impact and in higher level. For folks that are not in the meetings yet, but they want to, what are the approaches to do it in a way that come across in a positive way?
The way I started to do that was literally because I was in a meeting and I was briefing like a technical thing to a group. And there was a group after me that was basically going to brief to the next group. And I was like, can I stick around this meeting? I'll sit in the back. And they're like, yeah, sure. I sat in the room. I mean, it was this is a Lachlan Murdoch meeting. So it's like, it took like a little bit of chutzpah to like just ask to stick around. And I did. And like, literally that has led to me like co-writing this business, right? They're like, oh, why were you there again? And we started talking and like, oh, you seem pretty smart. And like, next thing you know, like even if like initially you might not have as much to contribute, and I'm very comfortable asking to stay in the room. I've done that a lot. And just I feel like I could learn if I could just be in the room. I won't be disruptive or whatever. And then maybe actually I do say something, because I think generally you don't want to be totally silent in rooms because people are like, why are you here? So you say one smart thing. That's it. Shut your mouth the rest of the time. And that's my advice. It's like ask to stay in meetings that you're not actually invited to.